Reviews of Warhammer 3 kind of miss the point. The value for money proposition of Warhammer 3 as a product right now is kind of irrelevant. And should you buy Warhammer 3? It's kind of the wrong question. If you're watching this video, it's likely that you're a hardcore Warhammer Fantasy fan, or you're a hardcore Total War fan, or most likely you're both. And you've already bought Warhammer 3, and you've already bought Warhammer 1 and 2, and likely bought quite a bit of the DLC and expansions for those games as well. You don't need a review because you've probably already got the game and you're probably already playing it. But this video might help you to explain to a friend who's thinking about buying Warhammer 3 why they should. Before you consider whether somebody should buy Warhammer 3, I think you really have to look at the context and go back to the release of Warhammer 1 and 2. A few years ago, before Warhammer 1 even came out, Creative Assembly did Ask Me Anything, a developer AMA on Reddit, and you know, the fans were sending questions, the developers would answer them. And I think it was Rich or maybe Mich. Sorry, I get confused about the who's who. One of those guys basically had a question asking about whether a particular faction was going to be in the game. And I can't remember which faction it was exactly, but basically his answer was something along the lines of, we want to do everything, you know, we want to, every faction, like, you know, every lord, the full depth of the Warhammer fantasy battles background that's been, you know, that's been growing and getting richer and more fleshed out for 30 years now. They want to do everything. Like, he didn't say that they would, you know, he didn't obviously promise that they would include every single character and, you know, faction, like every single character and faction, but they said that was the goal. They want what we want. They want the Warhammer world as fully fleshed out as possible. They didn't hedge and say, oh, you know, we've got a limited budget, we're just going to aim to do the main factions and maybe we'll expand if it does well or whatever. From the outset, they said, we want to do everything. We want this to be the biggest, greatest, you know, most amazing Warhammer game that ever was. And people got on board with that. It wasn't even like an official marketing campaign or anything, you know? It's not like they were pushing this out with like banners and advertisements and stuff. It was just a simple comment in a Reddit thread that only hardcore fans that were following the development before the game even came out would have read. But they said, we want to do everything. From the outset, the plan was always to make 3 games with 3 separate development cycles that would in the end be combined into one massive Warhammer world spanning game. And it was explained that the reason for this is because of budgetary concerns, basically to make the sheer size of the vision that they had for the Warhammer game could not be contained in one game's sort of development cycle. They basically had to break it up into 3 separate projects that could later on be combined in order for them to get the sheer amount of content into the game that they were aiming for. And that's what you want to hear, right? If you're a gamer like me, you're into the type of strategy games that have that incredible depth, just so much content that you can play it forever. And the quality and depth of that content means that you'll want to keep playing it forever. Creative Assembly told us we weren't going to get everything straight away. They expected a development cycle of 10 years. 10 years before the project was completed. Some of us won't live to see the end of it. Some of us have children that will grow up and leave home before this game is completed. And we're still in the midst of the development of the game. Like, it's not over. There's still way more content to be released. But that's kind of what you want, right? There's something kind of sad about when that last DLC comes out for a game and you know there's never going to be any new content for it. That's not the case with Warhammer. It's a living game that's still growing and evolving, and it will be for some time. So Warhammer 1 came out a few years ago now, and it was okay. It was a faithful representation of the Empire, the Greenskins, the Vampire Counts, the Dwarfs. We were reassured that Creative Assembly was doing justice to the beloved IP of Warhammer. But we didn't get what we paid for, because we weren't paying for Warhammer 1. We were paying for the start of the dream of this grand campaign, a combined game that was going to bring to life the entire Warhammer world. This was just step 1. throughout the cycle of Warhammer 1, the game got better, got more fleshed out, additional factions got added, beastmen, wood elves. When Game 2 came out, there was a big step up in the complexity and the quality of the faction mechanics, and we really got a vision of how much greater the game could be. You know, Warhammer 1 was like a faithful adaptation of the Warhammer source material. It was satisfactory. It wasn't a disappointment. But through the development of Warhammer 2, we got to see the potential. We got to see how great this game was going to be. Maybe before Game 1, the fans were operating mainly on faith and hope. When Game 1 came out, we were not disappointed. But during the course of Warhammer 2, for myself at least, I felt the excitement kind of growing, as in, this is really going to be a great game. This is going to be epic. By the end of Warhammer 2's development, on the massive combined Immortal Empires Grand Campaign map, we now have 69 different factions across 15 unique races. And the quality of the base gameplay is vastly improved from Warhammer 1. I was personally already satisfied with the game as it was in Game 2, and a number of other people I spoke to have shared the exact same sentiment, that if Game 3 didn't add any fundamental changes to the gameplay and it just merely added more races and enlarged the map, we'd be perfectly satisfied with that. Basically, I considered the game to be functionally complete at the end of Warhammer 2, and I felt that CA had already delivered on their promise. And now the release of Warhammer 3, and it very much reminds me of Warhammer 1 in a way, because, you know, there's not that many factions. And the factions, the Chaos God, Monogod factions like Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh don't yet have their full rosters. They've only got 2 heroes each, and not a very large roster of units. Of course, they're going to be fleshed out with DLC. But you have that sense, kind of like we had in Warhammer 1, that this isn't the full deal, but it's good. But what we've got is good. It's not a disappointment. And kind of like the step up to Warhammer 2, the faction mechanics for Warhammer 3 are another sort of step up again from Warhammer 2, as well as individual factions being new and diverse. The actual base gameplay has fundamentally changed, particularly with the new ally and outpost system, allowing you to have up to 4 units from another faction in your army if you've allied with them. So if Kislev allies with the dwarfs, for example, you could have a couple of units of dwarven artillery and some dwarven quarrelers in your Kislev army. You can imagine dwarfs and Kislevites fighting side by side against the encroachment of chaos from the north. You can do that in the game now. The diplomacy system is completely reworked and expanded and improved since Game 2. Sieges have been completely reworked. We've got minor settlement battles, we've got different siege maps, totally new supply system in sieges that allows you to build towers and barricades during the siege. It's not even just about these actual mechanics, it's about that investment in the game, that investment of time and money and energy in Game 3 to make it even more excellent, to make it even more amazing and outstanding. And it wasn't necessary. Like, Game 3 was already a slam dunk. Like, Warhammer 3 was always going to be a bestseller. You've got the Total War franchise as one of the most celebrated strategy franchises of all time. You've got the Warhammer Fantasy IP, that's one of the most beloved IPs of all time. And the Warhammer Total War franchise was always going to be a bestseller. When Warhammer 1 came out and it wasn't a disaster, the whole franchise was already set to be a success. That was pretty much all they needed to do, was make a Warhammer game that didn't suck. But Warhammer 1 continuously got improved throughout its development. And Warhammer 2 was a huge step up, which again got improved massively throughout its development. And now Warhammer 3 at launch is a huge technical step up. The content obviously isn't all there yet because it's a brand new game, but it needs those extra DLCs and free LCs to be released with extra content to flesh things out and add those extra factions. But again, the quality and depth of what they've produced for Warhammer 3 has completely reassured me anyway that the game is on track to become the fully fleshed out, amazing Warhammer game that we wanted. and even surpass those expectations again. But now I'll get to the reason why I think reviews are kind of missing the point about Warhammer 3. The Warhammer game franchise, Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, combined into Immortal Empires grand campaign that's yet to be released. It's not just a game. It's like it's a concept that was sold to us, you know, was sold to us years ago, before Warhammer 1 ever came out. The idea of this massive 3 games combined ultimate Warhammer campaign. It was an idea that was sold to us 5 years ago, and we all bought it, you know, because it's fucking awesome. When game 1 came out, we only had to pay for game 1, but we weren't just buying game 1. Right from the start, we were buying into the dream of the 3 games with all of that content combined to bring our beloved world of Warhammer to life. And that's what's happening. This latest installment of Warhammer 3, you don't buy Warhammer 3. Like, why would you buy Warhammer 3? That's kind of missing the point. You don't buy Warhammer 3, you buy it. If you're considering just buying Warhammer 3, you're missing the whole point. It's not about Warhammer 3, it's about the grand campaign, it's about Immortal Empires, it's about the Warhammer world coming to life. So my question really for you is not whether you're going to buy Warhammer 3, it's like, what have you been doing for the last 5 years? Why haven't you already been following this game? Why haven't you already got Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2, all the DLC at least for your favorite races? And why haven't you been hanging out for the release of Warhammer 3, and why aren't you still hanging out for the DLC and expansions for Warhammer 3 that are yet to come? The only reason I can think of is because you don't know about it. Because this is seriously the greatest game. This is seriously the greatest game that's ever been made. And maybe it's the greatest game that's ever going to be made. So the only reason I can think of is that you haven't got it is because you don't know about it. Well, now you do. And I envy you, because the only thing better than playing this game after having played it for thousands and thousands of hours is to have the opportunity to play this game fresh, having never, and explore all of that content for the first time with new eyes. I envy you. You're about to have a great fucking time.